So previously we looked at the enduring, timeless legacy of classic Sonic the Hedgehog games, as I went back and played through the full library of classic Sonic titles. Now remember in the previous video I stated that I'm ultimately more of a modern Sonic fan than I am a classic Sonic fan. So now that we're moving over into the 3D period, oh yeah, this is happening. In today's video, we're going to be looking at how the early 2000s and a complete change in perspective evolved Sonic the Hedgehog. And in this installment, we'll just be looking at the two Sonic Adventure titles, starting with
Sonic Adventure 1.
Of all the Sonic games, I think Sonic Adventure 1 probably had the most to prove. My, how attitudes change. When Sonic Adventure 1 was first released, 3D was, as far as the court of public opinion went, the future. So if they couldn't make Sonic work in 3D, it would effectively mean that Sonic didn't have any kind of future ahead of him. So Sonic Adventure had a lot to prove. But this wasn't 100% Sonic's first endeavor into the third dimension, as a 3D playing field could be found in the video game Sonic Jam on the Sega Saturn. There was also Sonic Extreme, the cancelled 3D Sonic game, which would have been the first one had it come out. A game that went through development hell and was later turned into Sonic's 3D Blast, a game that looks kinda 3D, but it's not 3D. But Sonic Adventure 1 would be the very first time that Sega would attempt to pull Sonic into the third dimension for a proper event status video game. This would be the successor to the Sonic the Hedgehog video game trilogy on the Sega Genesis, the launch pad for a new Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. And Sega clearly took this very, very seriously. Sonic has always been about moving forward and keeping up with trends. He's always been the product of kind of extensive market research. The 90s were ending, we were moving over into the 2000s, and it was all about being more extreme, being more slick. So the first things first, Sega embraced this new era with a new redesign for Sonic, making his proportions a bit more cool, his facial expressions more wild, and his poses more groovy. Sega were no longer working with the limitations of the Sega Mega Drive either, which meant that they could be a bit more expansive with the storytelling in this game. When it came to Sonic games, Sega always kind of prided themselves on having a bit of a story in there, especially towards that back half of classic Sonic's Mega Drive Odyssey. But now, Sonic could explode back onto the scene with a pre-rendered CGI intro, as well as being able to talk, in part thanks to the upgraded sound chip of the Sega Dreamcast, which meant that they could go much further with the story this time around, and so Sonic Adventure is a much more story-oriented video game than any previous Sonic game before it. The thing with the classic Sonic games is they always went out of their way to appeal to a pop culture crowd, as well as kind of being these hard and fast action epics. True to the nature of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic Adventure 1 feels like Sonic meets Indiana Jones, with a much more elaborate story than we'd ever seen in a Sonic game before, and probably one of the most elaborate video game stories of its time. This story would teach us a little bit more about the history of Sonic's world, where the Chaos Emeralds come from and who they originally belonged to, a bitter rivalry between tribes of Echidnas and these new species called the Chao. The Chao had a guardian named Chaos, and when the Echidna tribes tried to steal the Chaos Emeralds, the Chao used the emeralds to turn Chaos into Perfect Chaos, a giant monster that could wipe out the Echidnas, and had the potential to wreak havoc, until Tikal the Echidna would go and make peace with them. Moving over to the present day, Doctor Robotnik learns about Chaos and plans to weaponize him, feeding him the Chaos Emeralds to defeat Sonic. And Sonic is guided by the light of Tikal to help him on his journey. Honestly, it's a fairly multi-layered story for what it is. It's incredibly goofy, and it definitely doesn't work on an analytical level by any degree, but it doesn't need to. It did its job in keeping me invested and curious, and gave me motivation to play on. Speaking of play, Sonic plays very much like his old self, just in 3 dimensions now. He moves very quickly and has a sense of momentum to him. When he rolls into his ball form, it feels more like a pinball. He can still spin dash, but he comes with a new feature called the homing attack, where he can lock onto enemies and ensure that he'll land on them when he jumps. Because without the homing attack, jumping on enemies in 3 dimensions is forget about it. Sonic feels very versatile in this game. While he does move quickly, it's relatively easy to slow him down, making platforming not as much of a chore as you would expect it to be. The levels are straightforward A to B with multiple paths to get you there like in the classic games. And all the Sonic level archetypes you could possibly want make a comeback. You've got your sandy coastal paradise with some greenery and palm trees. You've got a casino, a city at night with lots of slopes, a puzzling maze with lots of water, a Robotnik-centric death base, a sky fortress, a tornado level. Everything you've come to expect from Sonic is here. The rings return, the loop-de-loops return, the shields are back. It is literally just a classic Sonic game moved into 3D, as far as these individual levels are concerned. But Sonic Adventure, like doubling down on its story, also likes to double down on the RPG elements. We really get to explore the world of Sonic as we get to not only go from level to level, but actually find out where those levels exist in this world, through the use of hub worlds. In this game, par the course for the early 2000s, Sonic is spending more time in urban territory. So you've got Station Square, a little city with a lot of places to visit. It's got a train station that you can use to be transported to other hub worlds, a big blue ocean for you to gaze at, an amusement park, a police station, a nice little hotel where we presume Sonic is staying, which comes with a swimming pool where you can recreate your favorite Sum 41 music video. This truly was a quintessential video game for changing times. Also in this hotel is a Chao garden where they even capitalized on the new species, allowing you to raise a Chao in a kind of a virtual pet simulator kind of deal. There's a number of different boss fights littered throughout the game, including many different encounters with Chaos, a character battle with Knuckles, and of course a final battle against Doctor Robotnik, now dubbed Eggman. So in short, Sonic Adventure is kind of the perfect transition for Sonic to 3D. But it's not as simple as just Sonic. Like previous Sonic games, this comes with a roster of different playable characters. So let's start with Tails. Tails plays pretty similarly to Sonic, except now he can fly, he's got a little tail spin, and no use of the homing attack. Tails' levels are focused on beating Sonic to the end. Tails' story ends before Sonic's does though. While Sonic is off exploring the enchanted ruins of the Lost World, Tails is protecting Station Square from an oncoming missile attack from Dr. Robotnik. Tails' story is all about moving out of Sonic's shadow, and in many ways he's the better character in this story. Then we have Knuckles' story, which focuses on him finding all of the pieces of the Master Emerald. The stages are no longer linear A to B platforming focused on speed, instead explorative stages with a treasure hunting theme, and a radar to help you find those emerald pieces. Knuckles' stages can be a bit of a chore to get through if you really don't know what you're doing. And with no shortage of exploration in Sonic and Tails' story, it's hard to really see why exactly this is necessary. But there's a good amount of discovery of his heritage and past to Knuckles' story to make it kinda worthwhile. It's just I wish it were more in the playstyle of Sonic and Tails. Then we have Amy Rose, where it gets worse. It's now more of a slow, clunky kind of a gameplay as Amy tries to outrun a robot that's chasing after her. Thankfully, her story is pretty short, but it's definitely a low point for this game. But then it hits a new low with Big the Cat, where the objective is to find your friend Froggy by fishing, and fortunately it's blissfully short, but it feels a lot longer given the very slow-paced nature of his gameplay. Fishing in a Sonic game. Okay. But things do pick up slightly when we play as a new character called Gamma. Gamma is a badnik. His job is to hunt, search, and destroy, kill Sonic the Hedgehog, but he goes against his own programming and becomes a hero and befriends Amy. So Sonic Adventure 1 takes us through this sort of landscape of different lives, so it's kind of more like Love Actually meets Indiana Jones. Now, I think things would be better if these other characters were optional, or at least a selection of them. But it's only when you complete all of the characters' stories that you unlock the final story, where Super Sonic must throw down against Perfect Chaos, being the final boss of the game. I feel like maybe just in terms of mandatory stories, it should have just come down to maybe Sonic and Tails. Maybe let the additional story layers be more of a reward than an obligation, because the story is just fine without some of those pieces. But overall, Sonic Adventure 1 has everything that we've come to know and love about Sonic just in 3D, and it just expands upon everything. The game more than proved that Sonic could work in the new age of video games. The graphics weren't bad for their time, everybody's recognizable, and I think it still holds up to some degree. As a retro game, it works. This whole game, in every single aspect, was very much a product of the time it came out in. And now everything has nostalgia value, and that's a good thing. It means the game has stood the test of time, especially with that soundtrack as well. No longer restricted to chiptunes, Sega could finally produce the funky, hard rock edge that they wanted for Sonic, and it fit him like a glove. Not to mention also the inclusion of vocal tracks, which were very trendy at the time. So personally, I would say that Sonic Adventure in many ways definitely lives up to the legacy of classic Sonic. The shortcomings of Sonic Adventure 1 are not what the game lacks, but what the game adds. This is anything but reductive. Sonic and Tails' gameplay is pretty much perfect. It's a lot of fun to do. So it's just like, okay, why do we need the rest of it, you know? But as far as Sonic's first major outing into the world of modern gaming went, this was a really, really promising start, as Sonic was delivering what he was always supposed to, a forward-thinking action epic. The question is, could they keep that momentum going for the next one? Which brings us over to
Sonic Adventure 2.
Now, if this franchise had prided itself on being a grand action epic that kept up with the times and trends, Sonic Adventure 2 is an absolute tour de force for Sonic. As far as this extreme radical franchise goes, Sonic Adventure 2 is very much the magnum opus of that, with a story that is in every way more
extreme
than ever before, to almost kind of the point of self-parody. Once again, this story peels back some of the layers of Sonic the Hedgehog history, as we learn a lot more about Dr. Robotnik's heritage and his family. Dr. Robotnik's grandfather, Gerald Robotnik, was a world-renowned scientist and innovator. 50 years prior to this game's story, Gerald Robotnik was assigned to lead Project Shadow, a medical program used to create immortality. This led to the birth of Shadow the Hedgehog, the ultimate life form. Gerald Robotnik hoped to use his breakthrough to cure his sick granddaughter Maria Robotnik, who Gerald loved dearly. Maria Robotnik and Shadow would become best friends aboard the Space Colony Ark where they were being kept, until military intervention was called to shut down Project Shadow. Shadow was seized and locked up, and Maria Robotnik was killed. This drove Gerald Robotnik insane, and he swore revenge on humanity. He was not the only person to feel this way though, as Shadow also developed a hatred for humanity after the death of his best friend Maria. So, moving over onto the present day, Dr. Robotnik wants to use his grandfather's creations, including Shadow, to conquer the world, using a cannon aboard his grandfather's space colony Ark called the Eclipse Cannon to hold Earth at gunpoint until they meet his demands. Meanwhile, Sonic has been mistaken for Shadow and has the military working against him. It's an uphill battle that takes Sonic across the entire Earth through into space, culminating in a team-up for every single character, including Sonic and Robotnik working together to save the world from the space colony Ark crashing into its orbit, as well as Shadow regaining his empathy for humanity after being reminded that Maria Robotnik wanted Shadow to help humanity. Shadow realizing that he could keep Maria's legacy alive by being kind, as opposed to acting on his feelings of vengeance, and in the end making the ultimate sacrifice and giving his life to save the world. Okay, this is a good story in my opinion. Like the first game, it's got a lot of plot holes, the dialogue is very goofy and clunky, but again, it's something worth investing in. There's a lot to unravel here. It's pretty multi-layered, and the characters do have a good sense of arc to them. But best of all,
it's extreme.
And in terms of the scenery and level design, Sonic Adventure 2 flips the Sonic archetypes on their heads. No, this doesn't begin with a coastal playground. It instead begins with Sonic escaping a military helicopter, falling from the sky, snowboarding through the streets of San Francisco, and being chased down the streets by a giant military truck, all set to the vocal theme Escape from the City, which is where it all becomes apparent that Sonic Adventure 2 has kind of aged like a fine wine in some ways. Others, not so much. Technical aspects, no, they haven't aged brilliantly. It's very much a retro game. But in terms of the action set pieces that you'll go back and revisit and remember, this game is absolutely full of them. Each one bigger and more ballsy than the last. This game is packed with memorable cult classic moments. In terms of how Sonic plays, it's a little bit tighter than it was before. Sonic definitely feels a bit faster and more athletic in this one. He also comes with a set of new abilities, such as a bounce bracelet, which allows him to, well, bounce his jumps a little bit, and a much faster version of the light dash, which allows Sonic to dash across a load of rings while on the go. He can also do a forward roll somersault. And Sonic's levels are definitely more focused on urgency and speed, with many of them having a timer working against you. Be it running through a forest which is literally falling apart, or going to catch a rocket, which is set to take off any minute now. Sonic's stages move at an absolute breakneck pace. This feels much more akin to the Sonic 2 style of level design, design, where the levels, yes, they're platforming levels, but they're built a little bit more around Sonic's forte, his speed, his athleticism. However, Sonic Adventure 2's progression is much closer to the classic games than it is Sonic Adventure 1. Given the more urgent and globe-trotting nature of this game, there's not really any room for hub worlds in there. So they've definitely trimmed back on the RPG elements. This is a story with Sonic constantly working against the clock, so I guess that makes sense. If you do want to chill out though, you can go to a much more expanded upon version of the Chao Garden. There is a lot more to see and do in this version of the Chao Garden than in the previous. And you can even make your Chaos compete in challenges, giving the Chao different abilities by earning little additional bonuses throughout levels, usually littered among robots. So that's Sonic's part of the game, but like Sonic Adventure 1, there are other characters to play as. So we've also got Knuckles the Echidna, and the treasure hunting stages make a return, for better or for worse, as these stages are much bigger than they were before, making the emerald shards quite a bit more difficult to find. The radar will only pick up on one emerald at a time, and the emerald shards are now randomly generated. So a walkthrough isn't going to help you here. It's gonna force you to explore. There are clues as to where these emeralds are, but they're a lot more cryptic this time as well. Given the random generation of the emerald pieces, these levels could take you 5 minutes to complete, or even 20. They're definitely the weakest link of this game. So basically Knuckles' side of the story is that he's chasing after a treasure hunting bat called Rouge, who tried to fight Knuckles over the Master Emerald and it's shattered. So Knuckles has to go pick up the pieces. So then we move over to Tails. So while Sonic's goal is to stop Shadow and Knuckles' role is to stop Rouge the Bat, Tails' goal is actually to take on the big man himself, Doctor Robotnik. But Tails' levels are a far cry from what they were in Sonic Adventure 1, as Tails now pilots his own transforming mech, which plays a lot like Gamma did in the previous game. It can hover, it can shoot missiles, and it's pretty damn satisfying to walk around in, especially when it's your mech going toe-to-toe with Dr. Robotnik's mech. However, one change from Sonic Adventure 1 is that these characters no longer get their own individual stories. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles make up the roster of characters that you get to play as in the hero story. Now, while this does certainly streamline things a little bit, it does mean that you could be waiting a little while between Sonic-themed levels, and that you can no longer really play the game at your own personal pace. So it can feel a bit strange when you've just been going breakneck speeds down San Francisco, only to now be wandering around the desert trying to find emerald shards. For the speed and platforming that you play a Sonic game for, it can be quite a long wait before you get to do that. But it is always incredibly rewarding when you do get to do this. Now, there are 3 other characters to cover, because the other story is the Dark Story. In this Sonic game, you get to actively work against Sonic. The 3 playable characters in the Dark Story are Doctor Robotnik, Shadow the Hedgehog, and Rouge the Bat. But rather than having their very own playstyles, Dr. Robotnik plays a lot like Tails does, Shadow plays a lot like Sonic, and Rouge plays a lot like Knuckles. This is a good thing, as it definitely draws up the parallels between the rival characters, but it streamlines things a lot as well, and it means that you don't end up falling short of those Sonic speed thrills, because Shadow does the same thing as Sonic does. It's like playing the same game through a very new perspective, and the levels are completely different as well. Once both of these stories are complete, you unlock the final story where all of these characters come together for the ending. So this is handled far better than the first game did. There's nothing here like Big the Cat or Amy Rose where you think, yeah, this should have been relegated to a side game, this shouldn't have been necessary to get the final story. Everything here feels necessary. And all of the playstyles are at least kind of enjoyable. There's a lot less fluff and filler in Sonic Adventure 2. It just requires patience. And with that, it is a very rewarding game. If you find it a little strange that Tails is running around in a mech this time, there is actually a story behind it. Tails was not originally intended to be playable in this game. Upon Sonic Adventure 2's announcement, there were only intended to be 3 playable characters. These would be Sonic for the speed levels, Knuckles for the treasure hunting levels, and Dr. Robotnik for the mech levels. But there was some backlash to having less characters in this game than in previous ones, so Sonic Team duplicated the playstyles, and I think the game is definitely a lot better for that. It's honestly such a thrill to play a Sonic game where I'm working against Sonic. A game where you can actually feel and see things through Doctor Robotnik's perspective this time, and his ragtag team of Shadow and Rouge make for a very endearing trio. And once again, the music is absolutely fantastic. And there's a lot more vocal tracks for you to rock out to. One thing that's quite strange about this soundtrack though is in all of Knuckles' levels, all of them now have rap music. It's no longer just his theme music that has rapping in it, but all of his level themes. These have aged well thanks to the rise of meme culture, because these are some of the silliest, clunkiest, and most unintentionally hilarious raps you will ever hear. The vocalist for these rap songs had to write the lyrics for all of these tracks in one day. And with that in mind, I think they could have come out a lot worse. I think my favorite portion of the soundtrack belongs to Tails. He's got some of the heaviest, most Junsonu sounding soundtrack of this whole game. So overall, I feel like Sonic Adventure 2 took everything that really worked very well about Sonic Adventure 1, stripped away some of the fat, and just dialed Sonic's extreme value up to 100, which makes this game irresistible to revisit. This is one of the most early 2000s things that exists. And for that reason and that value, for me it's only gotten better with age. This does not mean the game is timeless, no, this is a very dated game. But for that reason, it's very nostalgic. And I think, to be honest, in a world that still has an appreciation for retro games, I think Sonic Adventure 2 is the perfect time capsule of the early 2000s in gaming. So for me, the winner out of these two Sonic games is Sonic Adventure 2. But to be fair, these are both two very different experiences. I appreciate Sonic Adventure 1 for its RPG elements, such as its hub worlds. But Sonic Adventure 2 is just, as I say, it's a tour de force. It is the ultimate action-adventure game. So that was Sonic's evolution into the world of 3D. After Sonic Adventure 2, Sega would drop out of the market for making video games consoles, making them a third-party video game developer. So in the next video, we'll be looking at the games that made up that period. 3 of Sega's new age of Sonic games. Those games will be Sonic Heroes, Shadow the Hedgehog, and Sonic the Hedgehog, the 2006 version. I'll see you guys there. What do you guys think? Comment below and discuss, and as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, why don't you head over to channelpup.net, where we got a blog page called Dr. Blogtopus, but as well as that, you can also buy merch, such as this awful t-shirt. But if you want to be a part of the super fun Kennel Club, why not hit subscribe, hit the like button, and in the description below, you can check out the links to my Patreon and my Twitter. I think that would be pretty sweet for both of us. What do you say, champ? But in all seriousness now, thank you so much for watching, my fellow home dogs. Have a great day, because you and I both know you've earned it. I'll catch you next time.